to connect and share 95. For those of you who don't know, my name's Hugh. Laurie's asked me to step in today. She's in a meeting, and Helen, who sometimes does these, she has got COVID, and so they both send their apologies. Pretty happy to step in and also just be part of this community and learn from this experience today. So thank you very much for having me as part of this as well. So to get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional landholders that we are all on, and acknowledge that elders of the past, present and futures. So very much like to pay respects to all of those traditional owners. And again, just this session we'll be talking a bunch about mountain biking. We have some speakers later on that we will be hearing from. But before that, we're just going to go through a bunch of updates before we get to that. So to start off with the updates, I think we're going to talk about the grant first. So update on the grant that we were instrumental in getting for our industry is promised in January this year, has been delayed due to the impact of floods that has left many in the community in northern New South Wales homeless. Our patience has been paid off and they have committed to their promise, has also increased the amount that can be applied for since the original package was announced. The details are coming in the next few weeks by Service New South Wales. Now have this as the next project for funding rollout. It has a name, so that's a good start. Even though it is called Overnight Camp Fund, it is open to all who were affected by the policy of banning activities in schools. The next update is the Active Outdoor Kids entered its second program this week. Helen, who's not with us today, she was there to capture the full program and see how the kids interacted with a non-competitive active recreation opportunity. Apparently they really enjoyed it, and we also have a bit of a video of how this went. Great, thanks for that video. And it's good to see that activity initiative is going well. The next update is on the National Parks and Wildlife Service have released expressions of interest for those wishing to explore the opportunities for activities in the Gardens of Stone. So I believe that there is the adventure activities such as zip lines, and also for a guided walking tour, like multi-day walk with accommodation there, and you can see it on the screen, and when the submissions close in June, so just under a month if you're interested in that. Then we have the National Outdoor Education Conference, and the tickets are on sale. If you're a member of Outdoor New South Wales and ACT, you get a discount, and if you're interested to inquire. So currently happening in New South Wales is the Mentorship Program, and there we have that it's going to be happening in the ACT as well, and then needing mentees. I'm part of the program that's been happening in New South Wales, and it's been quite interesting and very beneficial process. So I encourage people to get involved with that in the ACT. Moving on to the next update we have is that reminding all members to update their details, even though if they haven't changed, because we've got a new system, just to please enter your details and update them there. We have a new feature on the website that will be a key focus for all activities with experienced outdoor brands, but we need you to tell us more about your business, and we have a video to show about this as well.
Hi all, this video is to help you with the new features of the Outdoors New South Wales and ACT website. As part of what we do as an organisation, we provide services to our members to help them be educated, connected. We advocate on their behalf, but we also promote the organisations and their services and offers. As a new feature to the website, we have the experience section. Now I'm going to walk you through how to add. First of all, you've got to be a member of the site, and if you are, you'll see that you have an area up the top here that introduces yourself as a member to the site, and where you can see your profile and your bookings and your orders. If you haven't got this, certainly go into the website and ask to be a site member. But once you are a member, you go down to a new feature called List Article. This will give you the ability to put in your company details, your description on services and offers that you have, images and call to actions. Let me take you through what that looks like. So if you click on List Article, you can see I have a dummy one there that I've set up called LM Outdoors. And this is a article, if you like, that will feature your business. And if visitors click on that tile, it goes through some detail about that business. So let me start from scratch and walk you through how to add your article. So you can see when you're logged in, you have a feature here called Add Article. If you click on that, it will give you an option to include all of your content around your specific product, experience or service. Now there's no limit to how many articles you can actually place on the website as a member of Outdoors New South Wales and ACT. So if you have some special deals, or if you have a special offer that's quite timely, or you have different products and services that are spaced throughout the year, you can actually add each one as their own article. So the important things to do is to certainly go through and add your details in here. So as I had before, it could be the same organisation with a different product. Choosing the category in which you fit. Now choose the most relevant that's to you. You can certainly add more features when you look at the blue areas down the bottom, but you can choose one of those features there. You can put in your website so that people can find you off this article. You can enter a call to action phone number. So if your phone number is different for the particular service that you're offering, you can add that in here. Here's where you put in your text, and there is no limit to text, but I will ask that people keep it succinct and very applicable to the audience you're trying to attract. Remember, keep it simple, stupid is the best rule when it comes to information to get people intrigued in your product and looking for what they are connecting with. If your box becomes red like this, it's because you haven't put the HTTP in at the front, or if you haven't copied it from a link. The other thing to remember with phone numbers is don't actually provide the gaps. It will feature it properly for you when the article goes through. So you can enter your text, whichever text you want in here. And as I say, there is no limit to that text there. You do actually have a feature to add a video link, which can take them to YouTube or to your particular site or a video you've created into that section there, but you don't need that option at all. And then you can go through and select all the different features that are applicable to you. So if you are a training and education institute, you also do catering in your venue for over 100 people. You're based in New England, Northwest New South Wales. You might be a registered training organisation if you're a training institute. You might concentrate on things like abseiling and mountain biking and snow skiing, for example. You can also add a price in here that's not mandatory, so you can actually put in that, you know, your offers start from a certain area, and you can add some context in the text in that article to ensure that the price is certainly understood. The other thing you can do is upload lots of different photos. So you can upload all the different photos that represent your product, and then you can click submit. Now, if you don't have a particular requirement for any of these, you can certainly just add your text in and it will certainly support you there. So then you can submit your article through. It'll come for approval. We will come to the staff here. We will be able to approve it. And once that is done, it will actually appear like this on the main page. Now, let me show you where that does appear. So I haven't approved this one at the moment, but this one is approved. So if I go to the home page as a visitor, right now, if you click on members under our members section, you will see that there is two ones that have been approved that are viewed by the public. They can then search them by the category. They can search them by the tags that you put into your article, or they can actually search you by name. And when you do that, the options will come up for the visitor. So I hope you enjoy that feature. We will be integrating it with the Get Outdoors section of the website very soon. So once we've got a majority of the product in there, and Experience New South Wales ACT.com.au will lead people to that section. So at the moment, this is what you see on that page. But once we have the population of our members into the articles, we'll be able to publicise that and be promoting Experience New South Wales ACT. Hope you all have a great day and hope that was helpful. And we will be with you soon with more features. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
So a good opportunity to promote your business. The AAAS and the Good Practice Guide are up for review. So to get your feedback in on those, just have a look at if we've got a closing date for that. No, it's not one here, but yeah, to have your say on that. And now I'd just like to welcome Nick Hannan from Oz Cycling, who's going to have a chat to us, particularly about mountain biking in New South Wales ACT in Australia, but also we've got here Tracy Dixon. Yeah, and I'd just like to welcome them here and thanks for their time, and look forward to hearing to what they've got to say today.
Thanks, Hugh. I've got a few slides, so I might take over the screen if I could. I think I need whoever's currently sharing to switch off their sharing. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for the opportunity to come and have a chat with you today. Can I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I'm joining you from, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I appreciate the opportunity to come and have a chat. What I thought I might do is just run through a little bit about AusCycling, some of the things we're seeing in the mountain bike space at the moment, and what we're doing now and in the near future. For those of you who I haven't met, my name's Nick Hannan. I'm the Executive General Manager for Government Strategy at AusCycling. AusCycling has been around for about 18 months, where the unification of about 19 different state and national sporting bodies for cycling. So we cover road and track, we cover BMX, and of course we cover mountain bike. So many of you have probably had some engagement with MTBA, Mountain Biking Australia. They're now part of AusCycling. I think it's fair to say it's been a pretty challenging 18 months. Bringing together 19 different organisations has been an interesting adventure. We're getting on top of it, but it's certainly kept us busy. Probably over the last 6 months, we've turned our attention to the future, what AusCycling's role is, and what we want to achieve in the next 10 years or so. And in particular in the mountain biking space, looking around at what the work that Mountain Biking Australia had already started and was doing, what some of the emerging challenges are in the mountain biking space, and what our role might be in doing that. And we've been talking to a lot of different stakeholders who have different perspectives, and I'd certainly welcome any engagement with you if you've got questions, suggestions, or just issues that you'd like to raise either today or in a separate opportunity. Certainly happy to have those conversations. So there is a lot going on in mountain biking, as I'm sure you're aware. Some of this is probably not going to be news to you, but these are sort of some of the perspectives that we're looking at the moment. The first is the massive participation boom that we're seeing in mountain biking. It is quite extraordinary. These are numbers from the AusPlay survey. The 2021 figures were released a couple of weeks ago. And the estimate is now there are 470,000 mountain bikers in Australia. As you can see, it has grown enormously in the last 4 years. Prior to that, there was a little bit of movement around, but there's really been a kick up, which is remarkable. And I think without knowing these figures, we all probably understand that there is an inherent truth to these. You go out to trail networks and they're busy. There are people out there riding their bikes, a lot more people than you would normally see. Trail head car parks are full. You go into a bike shop, it's pretty hard to buy a mountain bike at the moment. It's pretty hard to get your bike serviced. If you break something, it's pretty hard to get a replacement part. And that's all basically because of these numbers, this huge growth that we're seeing. I always like to put this in a little bit of context when I'm talking to people who aren't really familiar with mountain biking. There we are on the left with 470,000. We compare pretty favourably to if you're looking at sports, we're a bit behind Aussie rules, but we're far bigger than rugby league and rugby union combined. And I think what that really shows is that mountain biking is no longer this fringe activity that the stereotypical risk-taking young men go off into the bush to do silly things on their bikes. It is mainstream. It is a lot of people, and we have people from all walks of life and from all age groups. As a recreational pursuit, as opposed to a sport, there are more mountain bikers in Australia now than there are fishermen and women. And I've put in there cycling as just a reference point. More than 3 million cyclists in Australia. That's people who get on a bike for any reason. So it might be just to go down to the shops or to go to school or work. Or it might be because it's recreational sport for you. I think there's another really good story to be told in mountain biking around female participation. So this is a comparison with some of the other sports that are often talked about in terms of having really good female participation, football or soccer and Aussie rules. The Aussie rules line there is particularly interesting. You can see when AFLW really gave them a massive boost in their female participation. Soccer's been very stable over a long period. It's got good participation numbers, but they don't really move around much. Mountain biking appears to be a slight increase over that period, but I think what you have to remember is this is a period of enormous overall growth in the sport. So that period between 2019 and 2021, it might look like a fairly modest increase in proportional representation, but that represents 106% growth in absolute terms of the number of women and girls getting on bikes, going out and riding around mountain bike trails, which is fantastic. It shows that we're doing some things well. I think it also shows that we've got more progress to make. And that's, I think, a really exciting part of the mountain biking scene at the moment. I don't really need to dwell on the benefits of mountain biking. I mean, apart from being super fun, there are some really serious and significant benefits for the environment, for our communities, for us personally, and for the economy. A couple of years ago, MTBA set loose the economists on mountain biking, and they did a whole bunch of assessment and analysis and came up with some numbers around some of these benefits. I've got a whole nother slide deck, which I won't inflict on you about those numbers, but for every kilometre that somebody rides, it's $1.58 saved in our healthcare bill. We know that there are all sorts of environmental benefits of getting people more engaged in the outdoors. That's not a specific mountain biking benefit, but certainly when we're bringing the participation rate up the way we have, it's worth talking about. And mountain biking is big business, as well as being fun and good for our health. It's part of the broader cycling economy. We did some work with We Ride Australia last year, which found that cycling supports about 34,000 jobs in Australia, contributes about, I think it's $16.8 billion to the economy. So we're talking about quite a significant economic boost. And most regional towns are now looking around, and if they're not already interested in mountain biking, they're certainly looking and saying, well, can we get some of this economic benefit for ourselves? I probably don't need to stress this. We're all living on the East Coast, and we've all lived through this summer. BOM tells me it's the wettest summer since 2011. 30% above average rainfall. What's interesting, that's overall, but many individual sites in Australia have had their highest recorded summer rainfall in 20 years, if not on record. It's a huge challenge. And I think it's a challenge that's not going to go away. We're going to see these summers again, certainly, and an argument to be made that they'll be more frequent. The big challenges for us in the mountain bike space, obviously mountain bike trails, as with all trails, are susceptible to wet weather damage. We've had a huge number of trail networks closed, and we're still assessing damage. We're still getting clubs who don't know what state their mountain bike trails are in because they're still too wet to go out and assess. So there is a huge amount of damage that's been done. Clubs have really suffered because of that. We've had events cancelled and postponed, and that really affects club revenue and the ability for them to go out and engage with their members. Just this morning, my local club cancelled their XC club event for Sunday. It's simply too wet. And that really has when those cancellations happen over a long period of time, it really has an effect on the viability of clubs. And of course, as soon as things start to dry out, we've got a challenge with trail maintenance. And mountain bike trails require yearly maintenance anyway, but when you have the levels of traffic that we're seeing because of that participation boom, and we're seeing the amount of wet weather we've had, the maintenance job is enormous. And what we're seeing is a lot of trail networks don't have really fantastic governance or management arrangements in place. And they really don't have great arrangements in place to deliver the maintenance that they need. So this will be an issue that is a focus of ours over the next little while, because I think the future sustainability of our mountain bike trail networks really comes down to us getting these bits in place and getting them right, so that when this damage happens and when we need to go out and fix trails, we've got the structures in place that allow us to do that. It'd be remiss if I didn't mention the enormous amount of money going into mountain biking at the moment. Part of that boom is, well, it's a chicken and egg question. Are people taking up mountain biking because there's all these new great places to ride, or are we building great places to ride because of the influx of people? The estimate that I've heard is nationwide $150 million of current projects for mountain bike trails. I think that's probably conservative, but the reality is we don't know, because there's so much going on and there's no centralised system for managing this stuff. Certainly New South Wales is getting its fair share of the investment. There's great stuff going on down the south coast. There is some stuff going on the north coast as well. Orange Mountain Bike Club's been doing some great stuff and has some funding for new trails out there. I've probably missed a whole bunch, but you know, as I think we all know, there's investment going on everywhere. It's a great thing. We're certainly pretty happy about it, but going back to that question about, do we have the right governance and management arrangements in place? Do we have the arrangements in place for ongoing maintenance to make sure that these trails are kept in good and safe condition and they continue to be a benefit for their community? That's I think that's a big question, and something that we need to be focused on. Just finally, this is by no means an exhaustive account of what AusCycling is doing in the mountain bike space, but it's a range of different things that we're looking at to take action on immediately, and then what we can build on into the future. You may be familiar with the Australian Mountain Bike Trail Guidelines, which were developed by MTBA. We're looking to revamp those and make them more available. One of the common complaints we get from clubs and land managers and other trail groups is we just need more support. You know, we've got volunteers who want to come and help, but we need more expertise, we need more guidance. So those guidelines will hopefully be more available than they have been in the past. We've also got the question of how do we address a bit of training for volunteers and for clubs. We do have a model at the moment where we get grant funding sometimes to go on and run some workshops. So we're running a workshop in Toowoomba in the next week or so. What I wanted to find is a model that allows us to really scale up that training, so that any club or any trail group that wants access can get access to a really good training session. You know, probably partnering, as we do with the trail building industry, because that's where a lot of the expertise lies, and making sure that it's not just the big and expensive shiny new trail projects that are getting the love, but it's also all our legacy trail networks are getting the support as well. Obviously, volunteers are hugely important in trail management. We've just launched our National Volunteer Recognition Program. I only mention that because I think there is an expectation that's a bit unreasonable on how much work volunteers do in the trail space. We need to make sure that we're getting governments involved and that they're contributing. I think there's a role for industry in supporting trail networks in I guess, a different way than they have perhaps in the past. We really need to look after the volunteers that we have, make sure they don't burn out, make sure they're still enjoying going and spending their Sunday afternoon fixing up trails and making them better. Yeah, of course, you know, working with industry is going to be important in that. I think everyone has an interest in making sure that this boom in mountain biking is sustainable, that in 5 or 10 years' time that we've consolidated and really built on it, and that it hasn't just been a flash in the pan, and that we're you know, back to where we used to be without some of these challenges being addressed. So that's essentially what AusCycling is up to. As I mentioned, I'm really keen to hear some of your views. If you've got experiences that you think we should know about, or if you've got issues that you want to raise, more than happy to have a chat and hear about them.
Thanks very much, Nick, for that. Does anyone have any questions for Nick about what he's presented, or anything to do with mountain biking?
Yeah, hey, Nick. Oops.
Go.
You're right. So yeah, hey Nick, and my name's Blake Curtis. I'm an avid mountain biker. I'm based in Newcastle. Look, it looks like you guys are doing heaps there. I was just keen to see how you're finding the stakeholder engagement is going between like some of the key parties, like particularly in relation to like council and national parks and wildlife. Do you find they're talking, or do you feel they're sort of a bit standoffish with each other?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and that relationship, I think there's essentially two almost universal challenges in mountain biking. One is getting that management structure in place, the land tenure, the arrangement for who's responsible for what, and then the other is how do you deliver the maintenance task. It seems like, there's a great variety across the country. It would be my response to that. In some cases, it seems to be working really well. It usually seems to be because the right people are in the right jobs and they have an interest and they care. Compared with areas where it's not working, it's often because the people in those, whether it's council, whether it's in parks or forestry areas, don't have any interest in mountain biking. A lot of them don't understand anything about mountain biking. They've still got a very 1990s, 2000 view about what mountain biking is. They don't, they're not familiar with, what's been going on over the last 10 years. So I think the question for us and how we're trying to address this is to learn what's working in the places it's working well, and then trying to spread that around at the local level, and then also at a high level, telling the story of mountain biking more effectively, so that when we go and talk to the senior executives or the politicians at the state level or even the federal level, they have a better understanding of mountain biking. They appreciate what it brings to the table. And it's a great, mountain biking's got a great story, not least because it's great active recreation that's good for, our health and mental health. It's huge business. I think regional Australia has worked this out. They all want a piece of the mountain bike pie. But we just need to make sure that we're telling that story well. And it's not just about the new investment. It's about how do we, consolidate and protect the existing networks that we've got. And obviously there's a huge challenge there in formalising informal networks that, I'm not naive enough to think that's going to be an easy job, but that's clearly something that needs to happen before any progress can be made in those spaces.
Yeah, I guess it's a very localised view of what I see here. You'd see that Newcastle Council are all for it. They're massive advocates for it. I think they see the benefits for the community and the people. Seemingly national parks are fine as long as you're not creating new trails. They're happy for the maintenance and the upkeep of the existing, but there just seems to be a disconnect between the two. They can't seem to land on the same page. And I see they've done an hour up the street at Dungog, where they've recently put in a new facility, and it seems to be going from strength to strength. But yeah, just an observation.
No, absolutely. There's no coordination. It's not a New South Wales problem. We've got consultations going on with the Department of Regional New South Wales on their focus, which is essentially mountain bike tourism, and how do we deliver a strategy around mountain bike tourism. And then, National Parks has got their consultation on off-road cycling, and those seem to be working completely independently without any crossover. And it's like, well, come on, guys, these are the same issue. Surely there's a coordination approach here. It's not a New South Wales problem exclusively. Victoria's got the same problem. Queensland's a little bit more organised, and they seem to be working more, in a more cohesive fashion. David, you've got your hand up. Sorry, I didn't notice.
That's all right, Joe. I'm the Vice President of the Bright Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So mountain biking's a reasonably large component of our tourism, or bikes generally. One of the advantages we've got is there is actually a strong committee that oversees particularly the downhill mountain biking, but mountain biking in general. And that committee's got good communication with our chamber, and we can lobby the local council, although they're involved anyway, of course, as part of it, because they own some of the land. And of course, we've got national parks, we've got water board, forestry people, but it all actually seems to be working reasonably well. And I think it's because of the Central Mountain Biking Committee that has members of all those groups and agencies on it, so that we're avoiding that separation, people planning in their own worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing everyone together is always a benefit. And I guess Bright's got the advantage of, the economic benefit for the town is pretty clear. You're there on a busy weekend, there's a lot of mountain bikes floating around the town. So I think it's a pretty obvious, economic imperative for the town to make that work. But an interesting example, just down the road, I was in Beechworth with, you might know Andy Miller being in Bright. Beechworth has a fantastic little mountain bike park. It's on the one hand, held up as a tourism attraction by Ride High Country, which is a state government sponsored organisation, saying, come to the high country, look at all these great places you can go ride. Here's Beechworth Mountain Bike Park, isn't it fantastic? The land is Parks Victoria land, and Parks Victoria has a real problem with it. So you've got two entities of the same state government who don't have a shared vision for what this is supposed to be. And it's, in places where it's not working as well as it is in Bright, that's really the challenge. It's trying to bring all these different people together and come up with a shared vision for mountain biking in that space. And in some cases, there's hard conversations to be had about the environmental impact of trails in some areas, the style of trail that might exist in some areas. And that's, I think, the challenge ahead of us.
Well, I'm actually sitting in Beechworth. That trail's 500 metres or so,
Right.
The start of it from my place.
So you're familiar with the problems. Yeah.
Beechworth doesn't have a viable chamber of commerce, and our council doesn't bring, our shire doesn't bring people together particularly well. Tourism Northeast goes and does its own thing. So where Bright is reasonably, working good at working together to some degree, Beechworth is not at all. And so I think that's the difference. It's not having a single committee with lots of representatives from all the different interested agencies that can sit around and sort the blasted thing out at the pub.
Absolutely. And look, our challenge, my role is a national role, and it's across all three cycling disciplines. So I don't get to devote, as much as I'd like to devote my time to mountain biking, I don't get to do that. And we don't have the capacity to really facilitate all these conversations directly. So I think the challenge for us cycling is, what support can we provide? In the case of Beechworth, we've got a great club there. What can we provide to that club to help facilitate these conversations and broker, the arrangement that's going to work going forward?
It might be to come up with just a couple of different models that work in other places. Just a bit of video, a bit of information. These are the sort of things you can try. What fits for your area? That might give a bit of good guidance to communities, because that's what we really want, is guidance at the community level.
Absolutely. And I think just getting back to where some of these problems exist, it's often because the people in the departments or the councils who we're dealing with don't understand mountain biking. They don't understand what it is and what it necessarily isn't. And so doing that education piece around, mountain biking can be high-speed downhill trails in some spaces, but it can also be a lot of other different things. It can be epic adventure rides where, people are out there enjoying nature. It can be, small mountain bike parks that have, a fairly discrete trail network. And the people riding them and the way they're riding them there's a wide variety. So often it's about reassuring stakeholders that, we're not just a bunch of yahoos doing silly things on bikes. This is sport. This is recreation. It's people out enjoying the environment the same way they would if they were hiking or doing anything else. So that education piece, I think, is pretty critical.
Nick, I have a question about the sustainability of long-term mountain bike track maintenance. I'm not a mountain biker. I've been a few times in different places, but I've always got the impression that mountain bike tracks are generally maintained by a few very passionate local individuals. And as mountain biking grows nationally, I suppose a couple of my questions is that a sustainable model? And then further, how can we engage and include visitors who use those tracks, and maybe like a bulk, they may come for a day or two over those holiday periods and put heaps of wheels down the track and cause a lot of damage potentially, or wear, and then how do we get those people to take ownership over those tracks that they really enjoy, instead of just it falling back on the same people who get that burnout from doing the same thing all of the time.
Yeah, absolutely right. Like, that is the strategic challenge, is with booming participation, we're getting many more bikes going down, much more traffic on our trails than has previously been the case. Add in some wet summers, which, you know, the BOM tells us, you know, we can expect fairly extreme weather conditions going forward. So I think we have to expect more wet summers than we've had in the past. That's going to exacerbate the maintenance issue that's already a challenge. And I don't think there is a single solution to that. At least we haven't seen one. Unless you're a commercial bike park where you can exclude people and charge an entry fee, like, for example, Threadbow. Threadbow's got no problem because they charge, I don't know what the lift price is now, but, you know, it's a business to them. They charge an entry fee and they put that money into trail maintenance because that's their product. For most trail networks, they're on public land. You can't exclude people. And one of the things people love about mountain biking is that anyone can go mountain biking for free. You don't have to pay to go in. But there is this growing maintenance challenge. What I envisage is that there is a toolkit that we will try and put together of different options that can help address the maintenance challenge. There's probably not a single approach that's going to work perfectly for everything. It will be a case of, in some cases, volunteers will do some work. How do we make sure that volunteers are appropriately skilled and doing good work? Also, that we don't expect too much of them, that we don't burn them out. And then how do we create revenue streams to fund commercial work in other parts of the trail? You know, different clubs and trail networks have got different approaches already. My local trail network sells merchandise, which they get a cut of. They've got cool t-shirts and hoodies that they sell. We take donations from people. We simply appeal to, you know, their sense of fairness. You're coming here to ride the trails. Can you chuck us $10? If we can make that a tax deductible donation, which we're working on at the moment, that might also be an incentive. You make it as easy as possible. You have QR codes on the trailhead, or you have, you know, a little swipe, a little tap and go at the local cafe or bike shop. You can do some commercial stuff with sponsorships, some concessions if it's a big enough place. Stromlo here has a commercial shuttle service. It has a kiosk at the bottom. It has a bike shop, or, you know, a bike hire place at the bottom. None of these by themselves, I think, are going to fix the challenge. But I think a combination of these, and of course, sorry, I forgot the big one, which is we've got to hold governments to account and say, look, there's 470,000 Australians using these. These are as important as footy fields, as netball courts. You've got to chuck some money in the same way you would to the maintenance of those assets. So I think it'll be a combination, and it's coming up with, I think, a toolkit so that a specific trail manager can look at the toolkit and go, okay, well, these are the tools that work for us, and that's how we're going to do it.
Great, thanks, Nick. You got any further questions for Nick?
Just one comment there. With the funding, it might be something that we need to get Laurie involved with, trying to get all of the groups that believe that public land isn't funded correctly for all the different activities that need maintenance, that need trails, that need whatever, whether it's kayaking, biking, hiking. And we probably need to be pushing the governments to fund the land managers appropriately, so that we're not going individually as organisations and particular activities, but going as a huge body of people, you know, saying, hey, yeah, we need to triple the amount of money that's spent in on public land maintenance and upkeep and development.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be a hard job. Councils and state governments are not flush with cash, and there's always, you know, 15 different priorities that they need to try and fund. So it's trying to get in there and get some commitment to help support these local networks.
Great, thanks, Nick. Thanks for the question, Dave. Has anyone got any further questions, or Tracy, did you want to chime in and add anything on the conversation?
Thanks, Hugh. I might do the same thing and share a screen. If I can find the right one. Hopefully I've shared the right one. My name's Tracy Dixon, as the screen says, and I'm on Monero Narragansett land, which means I'm in Jindabyne, but I work for the University of Canberra in events and tourism management. But I also have a background in outdoor ed. So some of you may have come across me in past lives. So I'm chair of a working group on mountain biking, which has got schools, operators, training organisation, land managers involved. And we're kind of looking at, what can we do to represent ORIC, that keep having that hat on, Outdoors New South Wales ACT around mountain biking issues. I also used to be chair of the New South Wales National Parks Advisory Council up until the end of last year. So I was sitting on that body for 6 years and raised a lot of the issues around mountain biking with national parks, not just people who like to go downhill fast, but issues around shared trails, accessible trails, adaptive trails, all sorts of things. And that, a good adaptive trail is a good green trail for the family. And sort of what's happening with e-bikes, how do you design trails that suit e-bikes? And some of these issues they hadn't even thought of, in part because the industry is changing so fast that to design government policy and practice fast enough to deal with the change is almost impossible. Because by the time you've designed something around e-bikes and what are the power limits of an e-bike and whether or not you can have powered adaptive e-bikes, the technology has changed, the expectations have changed. And so while I understand everybody wanting to be able to get on national parks land and ride their bikes wherever they like to go, I think we also need to understand that they are a conservation organisation, not a recreation organisation. And so we need to understand what their prime role is before demanding that we can ride anywhere, anyhow, on anything. One of the things that we did with the working group was a bit of a survey. Connecting the dots between all of these. Everybody thinks mountain bike tourism is going to save them. Every local government, every chamber, you name it, they've got the best place. Mountain biking is going to fill the gap. But one, they're not doing a competitor analysis. They're not looking at who else is doing this, who's going to fund it. And then I think, Hugh, you talked about the sustainability issue. And I don't mean economic sustainability. I'm on your side in terms of volunteer sustainability. I live in a tourism town, a bit like Bright, and 50% of our economy is tourism, but there's only about 3,500 permanent residents. So if you just want to keep having more events and volunteer maintain trails, forget it, it's not going to happen. These people who live locally aren't going to service everybody's tourism business. So if you're thinking sustainability, you need to factor in how you're going to do this. And so we ran a survey on a range of issues around the mountain biking. And we had a range of responses, and it's dominated by individuals, in part because I also distributed it through through the University of Canberra community. So there were a lot of responses from individuals. Interestingly, while 30% are involved in a club as an individual, there were another 26% who were trail users, mountain bike riders, who weren't in clubs. So while Nick is obviously working more in the clubland area, there's a whole bunch who ain't in that, and so therefore How do you communicate around sustainability? How do you communicate about trail etiquette? How do you communicate about, trail usage and trail closures and all the rest of it? If they're not in a club which has codes of conduct and, instructors and guides and all the rest of it. And, outdoor ed can be part of that system as an education of how to be in the outdoors in mountain biking. And, I raised the possibility that, maybe every mountain bike instructor course should include trail maintenance, and that every outdoor ed session on mountain biking includes trail maintenance, because it's a unique activity in the sense that, if you're a canoe instructor, you don't have to maintain the river. If you're a surfing instructor, you don't have to maintain the surf. However, trails need to be maintained by somebody. And what I love is about when you look at a lot of those feasibility studies, a lot of them hold up Whistler as being the example of what they want to become. It makes me laugh. Whistler has got 50,000 beds, 15,000 permanent population. They've got probably $100 million worth of lift infrastructure. They've got paid trail maintenance people. So, dream on Macduff. Thredbo can't even become that, even though they have, a range of beds. Jindabyne has about 10,000 beds that are free over summer, which is why they can support a mountain bike tourism product. Again, that's around about the supply and demand. Trails would, generate demand, but can you supply their tourism experience? Can you provide the food and beverage? Can you provide the accommodation? Can you provide the other activities? Do you have the water supply to actually hose off the bikes? Or are you using potable water, which is, going down the drains with the mud from the mountain bikes? So what's your sustainability strategy? What's your parking around trailheads? What's your toilet facilities around trailheads? So a lot of this stuff hasn't been considered, it's just grown and gone on. I'll get to you in a minute, Dave. This is the only other slide I had, and then we can discuss. We asked for some feedback around what they would like Outdoors New South Wales and ACT to do around mountain biking. It's all around money. We want more money. Well, who's it going to come from? They want, particularly given that with a lot of individuals, they want variety in trails. It's not good enough, the ones we've got. We want more, we want different, we want bigger and better. The issue that Nick was alluding to before in terms of that cross-tenure communication and collaboration, whether you're going from an LGA into a forest, into a national park, is having some sort of continuous paths of travel, coordination around the sport rec, orgs, NSOs, some continuous trail networks, looking at active transport, particularly in urban and peri-urban areas. Lots of discussion of wanting to sanction trails that already exist, which means that they've been made illegally by individuals and they now want them to be recognised. The problem is whether or not they're actually built to appropriate standards, which means they're more sustainable, environmentally sustainable, and take into account vegetation issues. A risk assessment template, as I said, everybody wants more access to national parks. Discussion around qualifications, particularly within the outdoor ed, the instructing side, clarity of what's required and by whom. Removing red tape so you can build trails faster and harder. The focus on tourism, and as I said, the growth, this is an actual quote, you should be aiming to beat Whistler in Canada. And yes, as I said, good luck. So some of the thoughts on what we may be able to do were things around guidelines for trail development, which is similar to what Nick was talking about, because he was actually in the same meeting. Issues around risk management. I'm not talking about risk management to do with safety. I'm talking about risk management of risk of growth, risk of decline, so trail decommissioning, risk of increase in demand, which leads to maintenance issues, user conflict. So if you've got a shared trail where you've got the dog walker, the trail runner, the family on their first mountain bike trip, and the downhill hero. As I said, I live in Jindabyne, so I'm more of a trail runner than a mountain biker. But when I see people who've come off the TVT who are then on the Hatchery Bay Trail, not at the moment because it's underwater, you know, who still think they're on a downhill run, even though it's a green route with families and walkers and runners, and they still want to be going hard and fast. So having some code of conduct, some commonality around signage and some education to make sure that people know that, you know, and in part because, you know, as I said, the sport has grown so fast that we haven't been able to keep up with these things. And, you know, it's a bit like, you know, some years ago, you know, Nat Young doing surfing codes, you know, after he got bashed on, you know, on a wave. You know, Australia had been surfing for decades before we brought in some sort of etiquette and codes of conduct. And so I think that's where mountain biking is at, is having that conversation. And I've been at the Mountain Bike Tourism Summit in Whistler, in Canada a couple of years ago, and they're facing the same thing. Is, you know, what's a rating of a e-bike trail versus a human-powered trail, particularly if it's riding uphill. A green uphill from e-bike is different for a green uphill for a human-powered. And so, you know, having those sorts of common signage and understandings about ratings of trails and trail usage, etc. So I'll stop sharing, and then, oh, that was clapping. Thank you. So that was, you know, the 5-minute, you know, quick presentation of life, the meaning of mountain biking. Any questions, comments, feedback?
There is a review of the National Adventure Activity Standards and good practice guides, and there is a good practice guide for mountain biking, which of course is about dependent groups. So certainly all of those involved in biking need to be involved in that, because that's what land managers and insurers and others look at, those documents as being the key to the future. There is talk about a second set of good practice guides that probably need to be developed about non-dependent activities and how we risk manage in the physical risk sense, those non-dependent activities. And I think it would be better to have that happen as part of the Adventure Activity Standard framework than to go off and do our own things as organisations, because that way we can point Parks New South Wales, we can point them at the Adventure Activity Standards, and then there would be good practice guides for dependent groups and a good practice guide for non-dependent use in that particular activity. That's what I'd like to see the future.
Yeah, and David, you raised the issue of physical safety. At the last Mountain Bike Tourism Summit in Whistler I went to, a colleague and I from Canada presented on risk management in injury data collection, because we do a lot of research in the ski safety and ski injuries. And so because there's a lot of lift accessed mountain biking, and therefore it's being managed by ski resorts, we were trying to sort of say, well, this is what they're doing within, you know, the ski industry. How does this apply to mountain biking? But the challenge is when you're talking to insurers, when you're talking to land managers, there is no data around participation rates. There is no data around injury type, severity, location that can then inform the user. You know, that's where I suppose, you know, Outdoor Ed can collect that data on a program level, but that doesn't take into account the mass of individuals. And because, you know, it can happen over, you know, 30K trail, you know, maybe they come in, they go to the medical centre, they say, I got injured on the TVT. Well, where on the TVT was that? So it's a challenge when you're trying to look at the physical safety side of it and actually educating, because it's already, insurance is already an issue for anybody offering mountain biking.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Tracy. I'm just going to jump in because we have just run over time.
Yep.
So I'd very much like to, thank you for your presentation. Sorry if I didn't give you quite enough time there at the end. I'd also like to thank Nick very much for his presentation today, and to everyone else for coming along and joining us for Connect and Share today, and for bearing with me while I got slightly thrown in the deep end, but it was a really good experience and to learn what's happening for mountain biking in New South Wales and ACT. And yeah, thank you very much for everyone who came along today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, you. Thanks, everyone.
If anybody's got feedback, email me. Go for it.
Great session.